There are days when you wake up and feel as though your life has silently crumbled. The ground beneath your feet doesn't make a sound, yet you know it deeply. Something inside you is fracturing. The plans you once guarded so carefully have suddenly become strangely fragile, and the face in the mirror looks more like a stranger than your own. Everything is still there, but the sense of stability has simply vanished. Fear is always the first guest to arrive. It isn't loud at first, it's just a cold draft tightening around your chest, making every breath heavy. Then comes doubt, slow but ruthless, leaning into your mind to whisper that perhaps you were never as strong as you thought. And when true panic strikes, it doesn't just steal your calm. It distorts every perspective, casts a shadow over the future, and traps you in a dangerous lie. That this is the end, that this darkness will last forever, and that you will never find your way out. But stop for a moment, right here, right now. Listen closely to a truth that the clearest part of you hasn't lost. You are not trapped, and you are not finished. This free fall you're experiencing isn't a final sentence from fate. It might just be the sound of an old shell cracking, making room for a different version of you, one being shaped through pain, silence, and pressure. In the midst of his darkest years, Marcus Aurelius wrote a line, not to lecture the world, but to keep himself from collapsing. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This isn't just a quote to memorize, it is an escape hatch. Because in every upheaval, amidst every loss, there remains a territory that no adversity can conquer unless you hand it over yourself. Your mind. Reclaiming that territory is the journey we begin today. Welcome to Stoic Journey. If you need an anchor in the middle of the storm, subscribe to the channel. And in the comments, write a brief but powerful oath. I will move forward. Right now, you don't need to see the whole path ahead. You don't need a guarantee that things will be easy. You only need to hold on to one breath, one step, and the one part of your reason that refuses to surrender. Do not hand the pen to fear and let it write your story. Because the thing growling in your mind right now, panic, is, in truth, a liar. And its most sophisticated deception, which we are about to expose, might just change everything about how you view crisis, pain, and what you once thought was the end. Part 1. Panic always lies about permanence. Panic rarely arrives as a quiet guest. It storms into your mind like a frantic alarmist, magnifying every crack and turning a single moment of crisis into a sense of apocalypse. But its most dangerous lie isn't the intensity of the pain, it's how it distorts time. It makes you believe this feeling will last forever. It convinces you that the collapse you're experiencing isn't just a difficult chapter, but a life sentence. It whispers that the door that just slammed shut was the final one, and from here on out, life is nothing but a dark hallway with no exit. But if you are calm enough to take a step back, you will realize that is merely an illusion created by fear. Life has never stood still long enough for any state to become permanent. It is always in motion, always shifting shapes, silently carrying everything away in its flow. No pain has the right to stay forever. No confusion lasts an eternity. Even the most radiant joys cannot be held frozen in time. The very nature of life is change. And because of that, what is crushing you today cannot be the final shape of your destiny. Think back to a night in your past when you truly believed you wouldn't make it through. Perhaps it was the night a vital relationship shattered. Perhaps it was the moment you watched your hard work be rejected, or a day when the future looked like nothing but a thick, suffocating fog. in that exact moment, you thought it was over. You thought you'd be trapped in that gasping sensation forever. But what is the truth? You are still here. You walked through that darkness. You carried the wounds, the fatigue, and the bewilderment, and you still survived to keep going. That wasn't an accident. It is undeniable proof that despair always exaggerates its own power. The cruelest thing about panic is that it doesn't just hurt you in the present, it robs you of the memory of your own resilience. It makes you forget how many times you've already survived. It blurs every trace of your inner strength and whispers that this time is different, this time is too much, this time you will truly break. And when you believe that whisper, you stop looking for the way out. You stand still. You let fear lock your feet in place before reality has even passed judgment. This is why the core lesson here isn't to blindly fight the panic, but to see through its lies. Marcus Aurelius reminds us to return to the only part we can master: our minds, our judgments, and our reactions to events. When you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What do I need to hold on to right now?" you have reclaimed your first spark of power. With just one small step like that, the storm inside no longer fully controls you. Rumi once wrote that where there is ruin, there is hope for a treasure. That isn't just a pretty comfort to make people feel better. It is a harsh but liberating truth. Often, life only begins to rebuild you after it breaks down what was too narrow to hold the person you are meant to become. What is collapsing now might not be the end. It might be the painful, necessary purification required to return to you a foundation that is more honest, stronger, and deeper. Once you see that, you'll understand. Panic is only powerful when you believe it is the final word. In reality, it is just noise echoing in a transition. Nothing more. Part 2. Letting go of the illusion of certainty and control. The moment you realize panic has lied about permanence, it will immediately switch tactics. If it cannot make you believe that everything is over, it will force you to believe that to survive, you must immediately regain control over your entire life. It screams in your mind that you must understand exactly what is happening. You must see through the future, redraw the map for the years to come, and know exactly when this storm will stop. This is panic's second deception, turning uncertainty into something unbearable, then pushing you into a desperate hunt called certainty. And so we begin to torture ourselves with endless calculations. Someone who has just lost their job, suffered a heartbreak, or watched their support systems crumble often refuses to let themselves stop and breathe. They dive headfirst into fixing the future, staying up all night to plot out the next 3 or 5 years, as if preparing well enough will prevent life from ever hurting them again. But the truth is, the tighter you grasp for certainty, the more exhausted you become. The more you try to control every variable, the more you push your nervous system into a state of perpetual alarm. Because the thing you are trying to hold on to never existed in the first place. An absolute guarantee of tomorrow. Epictetus reminded us that some things are within our control and some are not. But in times of instability, we always want to blur that line. We want to control others' reactions. We want circumstances to clarify quickly. We want the future to answer for the anxieties of the present. That is exactly where we lose our freedom. Because peace has never come from manipulating the outcome. It comes from being present enough to live with what is right in front of you. You don't need to see the whole path. You only need to take the next step. You don't need a guarantee that everything will be fine. You only need enough calm to return to this breath. this day, the task at hand. Don't clutch the entire future to your chest and collapse under its weight. Sometimes a person's greatest dignity in adversity lies simply in the fact that they still placed one foot on the next step, even while the top of the tower was still lost in the fog. When you let go of the need to know everything, to hold everything, to be certain about everything, a strange silence will emerge. Not because the problems have vanished, but because you have stopped torturing yourself by fighting the unknowable. It is within that silence that a quiet rebirth begins. Part 3. You are growing in invisible ways. We often think growth must come with brilliant signs, a major milestone, a clear victory, or recognition that makes every effort feel worthwhile. But most of our deepest transformations do not happen under the spotlight. They come in silence, in confusion, in those days when you feel like you've lost your way in your own life. It is easy to mistake this feeling for a decline, but often it isn't a sign that you are falling behind. It is a sign that your old self is no longer wide enough to hold the new version forming within you. There are stages where you try to return to being who you were before, but you cannot. What once fit perfectly now feels tight. Old ways of thinking no longer offer comfort. Goals that once drove you now feel like strangers. It's like trying to put on an old coat you used to love, only to realize your shoulders have broadened, your posture has changed, and that coat simply doesn't belong to the person you are now. This feeling of displacement is uncomfortable, but it is not evidence of failure. It is proof that you are growing in ways the naked eye cannot yet see. When someone stands amidst ruins, all they usually see is loss. They see unfinished plans, the cracks in their heart, and the pillars that once supported them now lying broken. But at a deeper level, a different process is unfolding. The mind is learning to recover. The heart is being stretched to create a greater capacity. The inner self is being forced to develop qualities that quiet days never demanded. Epictetus pointed out that adversity does not create human character. It reveals it. It is in the moment of being squeezed that sleeping qualities like resilience, patience, and courage truly have the chance to wake up. Perhaps you aren't crumbling as you thought. Perhaps you are being dismantled to be rebuilt from within. This process is rarely heroic on the surface. It lives in tiny moments. A deep breath instead of surrendering to anxiety. A truth spoken after months of silence. A morning when you still get out of bed despite having no guarantees. These silent acts are what rebuild you. And there will come a time when you look back and realize you are stronger, deeper, and steadier than the person who once collapsed in the dark. Not because life became easier, but because you became different. Part 4. Moving beyond the past. Not to forget, but to liberate. There is a paradox that many only realize after passing through years of brokenness. Sometimes, what truly binds you isn't your current circumstances, but the ghost of your past. Old memories have a strange habit. They don't just sit quietly in your mind. They replay like old films, looping over and over. You remember the words of someone who hurt you. You remember the moment you failed. You remember the decisions that make you wish time could turn back. And each time, the past dons the power of the present. But Stoicism views this very differently. Marcus Aurelius wrote that people are tormented not by the events themselves, but by how they continue to think about them. The past, when seen for what it truly is merely a sequence of completed events. It no longer has the power to hurt you. What remains is only the memory and the permission you give that memory to rule your mind. Moving beyond the past is not about denial. It isn't pretending you never hurt, never erred, or never lost. It is about looking directly at it, extracting its lesson, and then refusing to let it write the next chapters of your life. A person who failed once may live a lifetime in fear of failing again. But that same person, through different eyes, can see that they learned what ease could never teach. A person who was betrayed can remain closed off forever, or they can become wiser, understanding the true value of loyalty and their own boundaries. The past is not a prison. It only becomes one when you keep looking back at the bars instead of walking forward. When you truly release the power of old memories, you realize something strange. Most of the pain was no longer in what happened. It was in your attempt to hold on to things that no longer belonged to you. This leads us to the next step of the journey, a step that is difficult, but more liberating than anything else. Part 5. Stripping away what no longer fits. One of the clearest signs of maturity is when you begin to realize that not everything that once belonged in your life needs to be kept. When we are young, we try to carry it all. Old relationships, old expectations, old dreams, even the roles society assigned to us. We fear that if we let go, it means we have failed. But the truth is, life does not operate like a collection. It operates like a garden. And in any garden, if you do not prune, everything eventually grows wild. There are relationships that were once vital but now only bring exhaustion. There are goals that once motivated you but now leave you empty. There are habits that helped you survive a certain stage but are now holding you back. Stoicism teaches something simple yet incredibly difficult to execute. Look at everything in your life and ask if it still aligns with the person you are becoming. If the answer is no, letting go is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of honesty. A dead branch should not cling to the tree. A coat that is too tight should not be forced on. And a person who has grown cannot continue to live within the frameworks created for an old version of themselves. Letting go is not loss. Letting go is creating space. And it is in that space that life can begin to rewrite your story. Part 6. Your timeline is not broken. There is a quiet but particularly destructive form of panic: comparison. It appears when you look at your peers and see them reaching milestones you're still searching for. They have the careers, the stability, the families, lives that look on track. Meanwhile, you are standing at a crossroads, picking up the pieces, unsure of where the path leads. Then, a cold voice in your head whispers, "Maybe I'm too late. Maybe my timeline has veered off orbit. Maybe I'm the only one who doesn't know how to live." But this is a cruel illusion. Life has never been a race with a single starting line, a single set of rules, or a single finish line. There is no invisible leaderboard deciding your worth based on what you achieve at 25, 30, or 40. What you are using to torture yourself is merely the curated surface of someone else's life. You are comparing your sleepless nights, your failed plans, and your very real darkness to the polished version they show the world. That isn't fair. And more importantly, it isn't the truth. Nature never operates with haste. Everything grows according to its season. There is a season to sprout, a season to bloom, but also a season to endure the cold, to take root and to silently gather strength in the dark earth. We suffer because we demand spring the moment we order it. We want the fruit before the wound has even healed. But the more we force time, the more we exhaust ourselves. Not because we are weak, but because we are fighting the natural rhythm of growth. A man starting over at 40, a woman walking out of ruins when her youth is no longer at its peak. In the eyes of the world, they may seem behind. But if we measure life not by the speed of achievement, but by the capacity to endure, by honesty with oneself, and by the courage to stand up after being crushed, they may be entering the most profound part of their lives. Your timeline isn't broken. It's just not like the majority. Perhaps these detours and years of feeling lost are silently forging you into someone steadier, truer, and far harder to defeat. Part 7. The survivor version of you will be entirely different. Pain never passes through a person and leaves them exactly as they were. It goes deep, rearranging what you once considered important and forcing you to see the world through different eyes. After a true storm, it isn't just the circumstances that change. It is you. The version of you that emerges from the crisis will not be the same person who entered it. And that is not a tragedy to mourn. Often, it is the harshest yet most honest gift adversity leaves behind. Think of someone walking out of a soul-crushing divorce, or someone forced to close a business that was their greatest dream. To outsiders, they look like failures, tired, fractured, disoriented. But that is a shallow view. Life hasn't just taken away a relationship or a role, it is stripping away the old layers of identity you once clung to. It forces you to live without the labels that made you feel safe, successful, chosen, recognized. That stripping process is, of course, painful. But within that pain, something truer begins to emerge. Not the glossy version supported by favorable circumstances, but the core that remains after everything external is taken away. Hemingway once said, "The world breaks everyone, and afterward, many are strong at the broken places." This isn't just a poetic comfort. It is a law of growth. Metal must go through the fire to become harder. A human soul is no different. Some strengths only appear after the old ego has been melted down long enough that it can no longer return to its original shape. The way through this stage is not to try and patch up your old self. It isn't trying to go back to who you were before as if nothing happened. The real lesson is accepting that a part of you needed to end. You aren't losing yourself. You are losing your old illusions about who you are and what truly matters. When you pass through that layer of pain, the confidence that finally appears won't be fragile, based on results or reputation. It will stand on a much firmer foundation. You have looked fear in the eye, walked through it, and you are still here. Part 8. Courage forged in the small, silent moments. After every true adversity, what is burned away is not just your old shell, but also the flawed definitions of strength you once believed. One of those is the illusion that courage must always take a grand form, a world-shaking decision, an extraordinary feat, or a moment brilliant enough to make everyone stop and stare. Because we are used to thinking this way, we often overlook our own quiet efforts. We tremble in real life and conclude that we are weak, simply because our fortitude doesn't look like the hero stories we've been told. But true courage is rarely loud. Most of the time, it appears in forms so ordinary they are easily missed. It is the morning you drag yourself out of bed even when your heart feels heavy as stone. It is the moment you step outside, continuing your work, continuing to live, even when the future offers no guarantees. It is when you sit alone with your sadness without rushing to find something to numb the feeling. No one applauds these moments. No spotlight shines on them, but it is precisely there that the core of human character is being forged. Brené Brown once said that courage starts with showing up and letting ourselves be seen, especially when we feel vulnerable. That is a profound truth. Courage doesn't begin with invincibility. It begins with honesty. Panic always plants a sophisticated lie in your head. If you aren't strong enough, ready enough, or perfect enough, then don't take another step. But that is the trap that keeps people paralyzed for years. In reality, no one recovers in a state of perfection. No one walks through pain with perfectly steady hands. We move forward while still trembling. We say what needs to be said while our throats are still tight. We do the right thing while our hearts are still afraid. That is courage. It is not the absence of fear, but the decision not to let fear have the final word. The strange thing is, this kind of courage is cumulative. Every time you choose to show up instead of hide, to endure instead of surrender, to take one more step instead of collapsing, you are silently retraining your nervous system. You are teaching it a new lesson. I can survive this. Hundreds, thousands of these tiny moments quietly build a different kind of character. Not flashy, not loud, but seasoned, resilient, and incredibly hard to defeat. And often, on the very days you think you are just barely hanging on, you are actually silently shifting your entire destiny from within. Even if, at this very moment, what you carry on your shoulders is a bone-deep exhaustion, or if a cold voice keeps whispering in your ear that every door has slammed shut, remember this. Panic can shake your mind, but it is never the whole story. It may seize a moment, but it has no right to define your destiny. You are not alone in this darkness. Anyone who has ever stood amidst ruins, who has ever endured long nights that seemed to have no dawn, has at some point believed they were abandoned by life. But they kept walking, and so will you. The precarious landscape before you is not the end. It is merely the suffocating silence before a transformation begins. You are still here. Your breath remains. And that alone is proof that this story is not over. Every time you choose to face the storm instead of running, every time you stoop to pick up the shattered pieces instead of surrendering, you are rewriting your life with a deeper ink. Willpower. That chronicle is still unfinished, and the pen, from beginning to end, has always been in your hand. If these truths today have helped your mind settle, even just a little, let Stoic Journey continue to walk with you on this path. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it as a way to keep these essential reminders for the days when you feel most adrift. And right now, head down to the comments and write a brief but resolute oath. I am stronger than my fears. You don't need to see the entire path. You only need enough courage to step onto the rung right in front of you. Life will continue to move according to its own rhythm. What matters is not when the storm will clear, but what kind of character you will stand with when the fog of panic finally retreats. The answer has never been outside. It has always been within you. I will see you on the other side of the uncertainty.